All right, we are live again here on Sales Pipeline Radio. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Matt Hines. Welcome to another episode. If you are, let's do some housekeeping. If you're joining us live on YouTube or LinkedIn this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are in the wild world, thank you so much for prioritizing us in the middle of your work week, your work day. You can be part of the show if you want to today. If you have a comment on our conversation today, if you have a question for the Senator Dave Brock, we can get to those. I just put it in. We will be able to see those. We can read those. We can reference you. We can put you on screen. So feel free to do that as we go here. If you're watching or listening on demand, thank you so much for doing so. Over 250,000 people have downloaded Sales Pipeline Radio and checked out various episodes. I don't know what number we're at, Dave. I think we're somewhere in the 400s, maybe the 500s. We need to probably keep better track of that. But every episode of Sales Pipeline Radio, past, present, and future, always available at salespipelineradio.com. Dave's one of those guys that we should probably just have. You could be like you could be the Ed McMahon of Sales Pipeline Radio, of Coffee with Brent and Matt. It would make all of our content richer. Dave Brock, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's such a privilege. And when you tell me those numbers, I mean, I'm just stunned by it. That's fantastic.
Well, that's over time, right? That's not every week, but yeah. It's a pretty good, yeah. It's I think it's testament to, like, when you do something like this, just keep doing it, just keep showing up. Like, the older I get and the more mistakes I make, the more I realize, like, most of life, most of business is showing up and following up. And if you do both of those on a regular basis, you're probably gonna be okay.
Well, you're both getting older and you make lots of mistakes, so you're really learning a huge amount. So,
my learning is accelerating because both of those things accelerate too. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so court jester, frequent critic. He's kind of the guy in the back of the Muppets theater as well sometimes. And we always know, when Brent and I do our show, we always know we've had a good show. And a couple of minutes after we end, we get a text from Dave saying, "Hey, you okay? You doing okay? You okay?" But hey, one of my questions I've always had for you. Dave is the founder of the Partners for Excellence. Excellence is always all caps from you. Yeah. Like, how did that start? Why is that?
It's something, I mean, years ago when I started the company, you know, I wanted to just kind of figure out how do I get people to focus on that. And so I just started doing all caps with it. I may have had some sort of marketing. It was long before I knew you. It was probably long before you were born. But I may have had some marketing guru that says, "Hey, from a branding point of view, that kind of is interesting." But now there's an interesting contrast to that. The original website, and if you look at my email is at excellenc.com, right. Which means I'm not quite excellent yet.
Right. Okay. So was that intentional, or was that on?
No, it was interesting. I bought the domains and everything like that in, I think, 1991, and literally 2 months before I did that, somebody bought the full excellence.com. Okay. Interestingly, and you know, I went to try and buy it, and it's been at various times somewhere between $5 and $20 million. But interestingly, it's never been used.
You could probably change at this point to partnersinexcellence.ai, and that would triple the valuation of your business instantly.
Absolutely, and it would be very accurate because I strive for excellence, and everything I do is artificial. So it probably is very, very appropriate.
Yeah, Dave's not even here, by the way. This episode is live with Dave's AI superhuman. Dave's on a beach somewhere, but we'll see if you can tell. See if there's some tells that this isn't the real Dave Brock. So actually,
how many fingers do I have?
That's 17. So if you question again, follow up on the excellence. Excellence is a broad word that means a lot of things to a lot of people. What do you mean when you say excellence?
And excellence does mean and should mean a different thing to every person. So what I really mean is, how do we achieve our own full potential, whether it's us as individuals or us as organizations, is how do we achieve our potential and what we could achieve? And that standard is and should be different for everybody else. So if we start trying to compare ourselves, if I start comparing myself to you or Brent as examples, I'll never achieve the levels that you do, but I still work to achieve the full. You can tell I'm a salesperson because I do all those things, but
Yeah.
but I work to achieve my full potential in what I'm trying to do, what my purpose is, and so on. So, and that question has come up quite a bit with the books recently. Is there the same standard for excellence for everybody? And it's absolutely different. But what I really want to do is provoke people to think of, am I just getting by and doing good enough? And I may be making my numbers and doing all that kind of thing, or could I achieve so much more? And I really want to incite people to achieve so much more.
I like that definition. I mean, to a certain point, excellence is in the eye of the beholder, right? I think everyone's got
Exactly.
an idea
Yeah.
of what they think excellence is that they see, as well as what excellence is in terms of what they produce. I think it was Henry Kissinger. I've heard this from a few different people who, like, when someone would bring him a report, he'd before he even looked at it, he'd look and say, "Is this your best work?" And he said at least
Yeah.
half the time they would just turn around and was, okay, fine, I'm gonna go do my best work. It's so easy, especially given how quickly the world works and given that we can sort of like have Claude write anything for us. I think it's become easier just to, mail it in,
Well, that's exactly it. I've for years, but particularly in the last year, I've been talking about how we're dedicated to mediocrity, and I think then we kind of look around and say we're doing just as well or just as poorly as everybody else. Why should I do more? But then again, I look at it and say we're cheating ourselves or we're cheating our organizations because we could do so much more.
Yeah. Well, I think it stands out, like, and so much more doesn't always have to be like 3 times, 10 times as much. But sometimes it's just showing that you cared, showing that you put yourself into it, showing that you didn't half-ass it. And that doesn't mean, there's a point of diminishing returns, I think, on that. But I actually think like the ceiling is rising as the floor is rising, but the space in between is getting much, much wider. And so your ability to stand out and differentiate, I think that opportunity just grows now and moving forward.
And that attribute of caring is so important, so foundational. And I kind of, look at it, there, several different dimensions of caring. One is caring about yourself. Are you doing what you could be doing? Are you achieving your potential? Are you doing something that contributes to your purpose? Another part is caring about your organization. Am I contributing as much as I can to my organization, and is my organization living up to its full potential? And the next part is caring about your customers. Do I really care about them and their success? And am I doing things that can help them more effectively or more quickly achieve their success? And these are all kind of interlaced. And if we don't care, then we don't show up the way we should show up.
Life lessons and existential observations on Sales Pipeline Radio today with our guest, Dave Brock. He is the founder of the consulting firm Partners in Excellence. We were going to talk today a little bit about the DNA of sales excellence. And I think it's a good topic. We've known each other for a long time, at least I think 15 years. And, the tactics of selling have evolved over time. But it's just like I tell marketers, I said, like, we got all these new tools and we got all these new tricks and everything, but the psychological foundations of buying and decision making that goes on, whether you're trying to decide to, what kind of gum you want to buy or what enterprise software you're going to deploy, I think there's fundamentals there that I'm implying when I hear you say the DNA of sales excellence. So I'd love to have you sort of, what is that definition and what is included?
So I have to give a little bit of background to it. So for basically for my career, I've been studying this, but for the last probably 2-3 years, I've been really diving into it real deeply. And I start looking at things and I say, I get involved with lots of sales organizations and looking at new programs and things like that. What are new metrics we should do? How do we coach people more effectively? What are sales training programs? What are programs to launch products and things like that, all these kinds of things. And what I started observing is, you can imagine, say, in an organization, you always see 2 distinct groups of people, one smaller than the other, They all have access to the same technology and tools. They're all selling the same products. They all have the same training and all those same kind of foundational type things. But you always see there's a small group that consistently outperforms the other. And you start looking at saying what's causing that performance difference. You also see that organizationally. You see organizations with outstanding products, great people, and all those things, but you see some organizations consistently outperforming other organizations. So I started diving in and say, if they have all the same tools, the same technologies, same products, same coaching, what's the difference? And I started saying, well, it's all the behavioral elements of things. And the behavioral elements are things that in my book, in the first book on this, I kind of outlined it around 8. It's caring, it's curiosity, it's customer centricity, it's accountability, it's the ability to deal with ambiguity and complexity, it's discipline, and it's purpose. And each one of those contributes in different ways to what you're doing. And I started saying, those are the characteristics that really set high performers out from individual performers. So then I started laying that as a background. And the second thing I started doing is saying, we have these mechanisms in organizations, call it training programs, technology, coaching, metrics, those kinds of things. We tend to focus on those exclusively, and we're not getting the levels of performance we could. Then I started saying, well, there are these behavioral things. And you can see some organizations, that focus only on, say, curiosity and customer centricity and so on, but they don't have the other tools to help them.
Yep.
And I started saying, these don't exist in isolation, but they exist working together.
Yeah.
And that's where I came up with the idea of DNA. If you think of 2 strands, one being the behavioral strand, one being the mechanism strand, and the real strength is how they fit together and complement each other. So for instance, right now I'm working with a client on really developing a whole new set of metrics. And, as we start looking at the set of metrics, we say, what are the underlying behaviors we have to be displaying to make these metrics really work? And in this case, it turns out to be discipline and accountability. So as we put that in place, we say, what levels of discipline, what levels of accountability do we need to develop in our people so that these metrics make sense to them and their work to achieve those metrics?
I love the way you're framing it around sort of accountability, right? Then sort of there's a group accountability and a culture you can create in a sales organization, in a marketing team, and any any department. There's also sort of that personal accountability and framing of like, this is my job versus this is who I am, right? Like, I do sales versus I am a sales professional. And even if you over your career end up working in different organizations, selling different products and services, you're representing your company and you're representing yourself. And so if you don't have to have a big ego, but to come with a high level of expectations for yourself and a high level of esteem for your customer and prospect, to treat them with respect and professionalism, the same way you would want to be treated. I think there's some standards there that I think like in the age of AI and trying to sort of automate sales workflows left and right, well, especially for sales that require a high level of trust, are really going to stand out.
Yeah. Well, and I think the accountability issue is so critical because we tend to be in a culture right now where we make excuses or we assign blame.
Yeah.
And that doesn't solve any kind of problems. We make mistakes. What we have to do is say, I need to own up to that mistake. But what I want to do is I want to figure out how not to make it again and how to improve and those kinds of things. But it's so much easier. I see in a lot of the clients I work in, it's so much easier to say, hey, our products suck. I was in a call earlier today with a group, the comp plan sucked, and all those kinds of things. And I said, you really need to take ownership and accountability over it.
Well, and I think that sometimes I think we're afraid of accepting or communicating that there's something we could personally have done better or different.
Yeah.
I see this in marketing teams all the time when we're like, if you pretend that everything's working great, no one's going to believe that, right? I had a friend recently describe that as success theater, right? It's the slide deck at the board lighting this like, here's everything's going great. Like that, they're not there just to sort of pat you on the back. They're there to help you solve problems. They know there are problems. There's always problems. So be honest about what's not working. Be honest about the things that you launched that didn't work out the way you wanted to. Because if you're honest and accountable about that, you'll have more trust and confidence with the next thing you want to do.
Well, and frankly, if you aren't making some mistakes, and not purposely making mistakes, but if you aren't making some mistakes and getting your teeth kicked in on the way, you aren't pushing yourself as far as you could push yourself. And
Yeah.
also, yeah.
And I think that there's a difference between perfection and excellence there as well, right? Where I was in an organization once where the marketing leader said, this is years ago before I started this, she said, I expect flawless execution. I'm like, I don't think that that's possible, you know? And so I'm all for setting a high level of excellence in terms of expectations, but excellence also means learning from your mistakes. It means being accountable for things that didn't work, right? And so I think to be open and honest about what that really means is really important. Dave, we're already running out of time here. I knew we would. We should just have the Dave Brock corner for Sales Pipeline Radio and or Coffee with Brent moving forward. What's something as we head into the second half of this year? Let's think about the conversations you're having with go-to-market teams. What's something you're excited about, and what's something you're afraid of?
What I'm excited about with a certain set of organizations, the type of clients I work with tend to be kind of very innovative, high-performing organizations. What I'm really excited about is how they're rethinking everything they do in looking at AI, but they're doing it in a very different way than I see most people do. Most people are looking at AI to say, how can I get it to do the work for me?
Yeah.
The people I'm working with say, how do we completely restructure and imagine new things that we can do? And then where does AI contribute to that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And none of us have the answers for that. So we're figuring it out in real time. And every day it changes because of the capabilities of the tools. But that's what we're seeing is some breakthroughs with people that are just stunning and really exciting. And that just, that keeps me, waking up in the morning. I don't even need a cup of coffee because I'm so excited about those things.
What's something you're afraid of?
I'm afraid of the easy button, which too many organizations do. And that's where we start seeing these trends for mediocrity. Is now, for instance, and I'll keep on the AI bit too, is now we're looking at people that are replacing work that they're doing with AI agents. And so they're accomplishing mediocrity at scale. The other thing that they're never doing is, should we even be doing this in the first place?
Exactly. Yep.
And so what I see people doing is with the easy button, this is very easy to do in AI. I can do it, in 15 minutes and have it manage my calendar, manage my research, send, 10,000 highly personalized emails that say, dear occupant or current resident, and probably to the wrong company. And that just accelerates mediocrity and gets us so that we aren't achieving our full potential.
I agree. So it's funny that you say that's something you're afraid of. I think the more companies that are producing mediocre work, the more companies that want to follow the easy button, it's just going to make us stand out, right? For those that still care, for those that put in the extra effort, those that still use the tool, but make it you. Right? And make it something that is still achieving a higher expectation of excellence. I would love for more people in my space and our competitors to do that, because it'll just help us stand out more. Dave Brock, thank you so much for joining us. This is always a pleasure. It always goes too fast, but I appreciate you joining us.
Well, thanks so much. I always have so much fun talking to you.
And if you get a chance to connect with the real Dave Brock on the beach, tell him I hope he's reapplying sunscreen and staying hydrated. And for everyone else who's watching, hanging out today, thanks so much for being part of the show, for checking us out. Thanks for, as always, for downloading, listening, watching Sales Pipeline Radio. We'll be back next week with another great episode. Until then, take care. We'll see you soon.